And hello everybody, welcome to Flight Pass. My name is Simon and we are continuing our story today about the Falklands War. We're talking 1982. What I'm going to do is just make sure the audio is playing correctly. Let me just jig that over. You should now get the audio of the game, hopefully. So this is the second live stream on Twitch and YouTube, and if you are trying to go back to the beginning, then you can see the videos. They'll be popping up on YouTube. They'll be staying there. The VODs, I think they're called. You'll be able to find them there. Let me just change the location of the stream. So at the top of the screen, you'll see on the top left will be the subject, and you can see that's the Falklands War. In the middle is the location where we'll be the general location of where we're going to be, and the right hand side is the general sort of time scale of it. If you guys are new to the channel, this is a relaxed kind of chat. I am an amateur historian, and it's just a sort of leading a discussion essentially. So feel free to jump in and ask questions, or tell me if I've got something wrong. Just to make sure, this is a subject called the Falklands War, and I know that this is a hotly debated subject in terms of geopolitics, but we try to remove the politics from this stream as much as possible. We know that there are two conflicting sides here. That's why it is a conflict. That's the definition of a war. It's diplomacy by other means. And there's empathy for both sides of the argument, you could say. But what we are actually looking at here is the facts of what actually happened militarily. And the idea of this channel is essentially to use the flight simulator of Microsoft. Because it's got satellite imagery, it means we can basically go anywhere in the world, and we can have a look at what it looks like on the ground. And so it gives us a better understanding of the problems that these both the defenders and the attackers on the islands faced, and the distances involved. And that's really essentially all this is. It's just to get a better understanding. Now you'll see, if you're watching back on YouTube at some of the episodes, you'll see a number of cards pop up during this episode and other episodes. And these will be things like the different playlists that we've done. So we've done similar things already with D-Day, looking at the first 24 hours. You can go and check that out. That should have appeared at the beginning of the stream probably, or every 5 minutes. We've also done one on Waterloo, and the campaign of Waterloo, and essentially the 100 days, followed Napoleon all the way from Elba and then all the way back to St. Helena. And now we're doing the Falklands War. And in the first stream that we did, we essentially looked at some of the causes of the war, but some of the initial sort of actions that led to conflict. And we began down here at this set of islands, which are called the Southern Thule Islands. This is part of a chain of islands that is the Sandwich Islands, which you can see here, deep in the South Atlantic. And essentially what that was that Southern Thule Island, where we are looking at down here, was an initial tactic, I suppose, by the Argentine junta, where they would use legitimate contracted scrap dealers or whalers who would be contracted to go onto the island to do some work, and they would replace them or use them to basically essentially put military personnel onto the islands and raise the and raised the Argentine flag on essentially what is internationally known as British territory. And this happened in 1976, and basically at the time this was the government of Heath, I think, or no, Wilson. They essentially had David Owen, I think, was Foreign Secretary. Crosland initially did it, but they were basically ignoring the fact that the flag had been raised here, because they were basically negotiating the essentially talks were beginning about the transfer of the Falklands to Argentina. Now, that essentially set a pattern where the Argentine government could see that the interest of the British government in these sets of islands was waning. And when we get to 1982, there's plans for HMS Endurance, which is an Arctic survey vessel, to be decommissioned and not replaced. And again, it's another sort of a nod that the Argentines thought basically meant that no action would be taken if they did anything. And so they tried to repeat what happened on Southall Island with what's happening on St. George Island. And they do the same thing, and we flew around here, and essentially there's a whaling station here at Leith Harbour, and some scrap metal people arrived there, and this guy called Estes, he's a pretty nasty piece of work. He was part of the Dirty War. He was wanted in many countries, but he was essentially landed here, and this was a little bit more public than the one on Southall. The British government could easily ignore the Southall thing. It was a very small party, and essentially could ignore it. But this landing here was a little bit more noisy, and it was something that the British government wouldn't be able to ignore publicly. And so what essentially happens here is the British government send in HMS Endurance and some Marines, and they basically get to this place called Grytviken here and King Edward Point, and they essentially try to defend this harbour from the Argentine forces that were coming in. Puma helicopter gets shot down, I believe, somewhere over here, and the corvette that was used, the Argentine corvette, was shot up a bit, but they effectively surrendered. And that was, I think, on the 3rd of April. The day before, the Argentines had invaded the Falkland Islands, and we looked at that. So go back and look at probably episodes 3 and 4 now. And essentially what happened here is on the evening before, Argentine commandos would come into this beach here, which I believe is called Green Beach, and they would split into two. One would go around this hill, which is here, which is known as Sapper Hill, and they would head up here to this set of buildings, which is the Moody Brook Barracks. They essentially wanted to cut off the Royal Marines or seize the Royal Marines there, and then the other half section of Argentine commandos went across here and essentially sieged Government House, which I believe is this building right here. Whilst that's going on, there was an insertion of essentially from the Santa Fe onto this beach here. They were from some demolition guys, and they took out the lighthouse here, and then they moved across here, and they essentially seized this, secured this bay here, which is called York Bay, and this was where Argentine armored vehicles was offloaded here in order to attack this Port Stanley airfield. More troops were flown in by helicopter to seize capture the runway here, and what we then talked about was the Marines sections. I believe it was definitely 1 and maybe section 4, I can't remember now precisely. They protected, fell back here, destroyed some Amtrak in this area across this causeway, and essentially fought back along this road and into Stanley, and fell back on Government House to protect the governor. There was another Amtrak which was destroyed around a place called White Rocks, which I believe is somewhere here. And by about, I think it was about 8:30 in the morning, actually Hercules C-130 aircraft are starting to land at Stanley, the seized airport, and the Rex Hunt essentially tells the Marines to surrender, and that essentially brings to the end the Argentine invasion of the Falklands at this point here. And this is on the 2nd of April, I believe, when this happens. Now that's where we got to in the last session, and we're going to now see what the reaction was to that. And the first thing that happens is the RAF transport aircraft. We've already spoken about how some of the submarines have sent out. Spartan and Splendid have already been sent out. And on the 4th of April 1982, RAF transport aircraft fly to Ascension Island. And that is, I think this is St. Helena. That's St. Helena, and Ascension Island is here. So let's start our flying here, and we'll have a look at Ascension Island, and it's essential. It's a role in as a staging post for the British. Okay. Let's see if we can get up in the air without crashing. Now, you're going to see that this island is obviously it's a volcanic island in the middle of the South Atlantic, and it's pretty harsh conditions. We're at the airbase at the moment. We'll take a little fly around and see what this place looks like. Obviously a volcanic island. And let's just circle around and have a look back at the airfield. So this is where RAF transport aircraft are dispatched to on the 4th of April 1982. And essentially they're coming here to prepare the island for the as a staging post for the task force. This is also the same day that Conqueror, HMS Conqueror, is an attack submarine. It sails from Fastlane. Now we'll come back and look at the Conqueror episode. We know we've spoken about Splendid and Spartan and how the rules of war or rules of engagement hadn't been exactly laid out. You know, there's still talks at this time of a diplomatic resolution. So lots of the opportunities that these submarines could have taken were not taken at the time. And we'll get back to Conqueror later, just to know that he was commanded by Chris Redford Brown. And it would arrive in the area of the Falklands, the exclusion zone of the area of the Falklands, which is the 200-mile exclusion zone around it. About 21 days later. And its first task on arrival into the exclusion zone it was ordered to essentially do a reconnaissance flight, reconnaissance sweep around the islands, hunting for Argentine shipping, and essentially trying to prioritizing finding the aircraft carrier, the 25 de Mayo. And it was essential that this aircraft carrier was, if it couldn't be taken out, was sent back to port, because the whole task of retaking the Falklands would be a naval task, and having an aircraft carrier being able to attack the task force was not going to be allowed, or it had to be removed, otherwise there would be no retaking of the islands for the British. I'll say this now just in case I do forget to mention it when we come to this episode, so forgive me if we repeat this later. But what happens on the 30th of April is the Conqueror detects the task force, essentially, of the Armada, the Repubblica Argentina. It ran about I think it was she detected on a long range sonar, I believe. And this was a convoy that was being led by the cruiser, the General Belgrano. Belgrano was a World War II cruiser. It was a previous U.S. Navy light cruiser from World War II. That was being accompanied by 2 destroyers, and essentially it was traveling around the sort of south of the island, and it's believed that the aircraft carrier, the 25 de Mayo, was on the north, so they were trying to do a sort of pincer movement. The Belgrano was initially launched in 1938. It had been upgraded in 1960, but it was pretty old by then. In fact, they were in the 1980s. They weren't getting parts anymore for the ship, and it had a poor radar and sonar capability. But the destroyers accompanying her did have X-sector capabilities, which were anti-ship missiles, and the guns on the General Belgrano had a range of about 13 miles, and it was sailing outside of the exclusion zone that had been imposed by the British to all shipping. But it was never something that was written that if you were outside of this and you're an Argentine warship, that you wouldn't be a legitimate target. The exclusion zone was more, I think, a warning essentially to any other traffic in the area. There was also a warning to the Russian Navy, the task force, when it was coming down the Atlantic, was being tracked by a Russian submarine, and so this was also an exclusion zone for the Russian Navy. So Cold War tactics at the time. They were trying to sort of gauge the capabilities of each of the navies, and so the Russians had an interest here. When people talk about the controversy of the sinking of the Belgrano, you've got to remember that the actual captain of the Belgrano himself never thought that he was safe outside the exclusion zone, and thought it was he was a legitimate target at the time. So, now we've talked about the other submarines, Splendid and Spartan, and they had the opportunity to sink, or they had the opportunity to attack the aircraft carrier, the 25th of May. Earlier in the war, earlier in the initial sort of diplomacy stages, but they were refused permission to do that because they were still looking for a diplomatic solution. And I suppose what you could say is that once the Belgrano gets sunk, the gloves are truly off when that happens. So we're skipping a little bit ahead here, but just to round up this bit, just in case I forget, and I do forget. But Belgrano basically was, as I say, was to the south, and there was a convoy with the 25th of May to the north, and Sandy Woodward, the commander of the task force, was worried that his task force, which was operating to the northeast of the islands, was essentially going to be placed into a pincer attack. And so he asks permission back to Northwood to have Conqueror sink the Belgrano. So after a lot of debate, and it went essentially to Margaret Thatcher as well, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Fleet and Task Force Commander, Admiral Sir John Fieldhouse. He was at the Royal Navy's Command Centre in Northwood, and he gave permission for the General Belgrano to be engaged. Some people say there's a controversy because in the meantime, the Belgrano had actually turned around and had gone back, was heading south and away from the islands. But essentially the order came through, and Conqueror couldn't guarantee that they couldn't track the Belgrano. They might lose the sighting of it, and so they go ahead and attack the Belgrano. And this has caused a lot of controversy. Obviously, a lot of men died, and we shouldn't forget that. But the General Belgrano's captain, as I say, and even the Argentine government acknowledged that the attack was a legitimate act of war. So on the 2nd of May, this was on the 2nd of May, HMS Conqueror becomes the first nuclear-powered submarine to sink an enemy surface ship using torpedoes, and it launched 3 Mark 8 torpedoes, and 2 of which struck home and exploded. Now, the sinking was rapid. It was 20 minutes. The crew abandoned ship, but the Belgrano was unable to issue a mayday signal because of an electrical failure, and the poor visibility at the time meant that the escorting destroyers weren't even aware of the sinking until some hours later. And this exaggerated the casualties at the time, and 323 men were killed. The 2 destroyers believe that they were still under attack, even an hour later. They continued to sail west. They were releasing depth charges. And this also then delays any attempt at rescuing these poor sailors. Okay, so that's this is the live weather, by the way, at Ascension, and we seem to now have a bit of cloud cover. But you can see how barren and volcanic this island is. It's literally just an airbase, a floating aircraft carrier. Now, the British are trying to get a diplomatic end to this conflict. There's Secretary Haig of the US is acting as intermediary, and this is way before this Conqueror thing, by the way. But essentially, what the British are going to try to do is to show that that they've got teeth, and they believe that if they send down as much hardware as possible, as quickly as possible, then the Argentines will see that this is a fool's errand, trying to take these islands or keep these islands, and that the withdrawal of the Argentine forces will be done before any bloodshed happens. Now, of course, the problem is we've got 2 nations now who can't back down or won't back down, as political reputations are at stake. Whichever political system or leader backs down is likely to lose their jobs, and so it's quickly becoming something that will escalate into conflict quite quickly. Now, that conflict didn't have to be as violent as it was going to be. It could have been stopped at certain points. The Belgrano, though, was an example, possibly, of something that the Argentines couldn't be seen to back that away from, and triggers a fight. And we'll see later as well, there's certain ships are sunk, HMS Sheffield, and that then it just sort of escalates each time and it goes past the point. And so that's why we see a war occurring, and it's only when British guns are looking down on Stanley that the Argentines face up to the fact that they need to surrender. But on the way to that point, there was many chances to back down. But with the sailing of the task force from Britain down here, the visible sailing away of the fleet, the Royal Navy, down towards the Falklands, it was unlikely that Margaret Thatcher would be the one to back down. So let's talk about that task force. The 5th of April then. So we're literally talking 4 days, 3 or 4 days after the invasion of the Falklands. HMS Hermes and Invincible, the 2 aircraft carriers that the Royal Navy have, they sail from Portsmouth. Now, I believe some of the ships were HMS Invincible, for example, I believe might have had an issue with its engines at the time and was sailing slowly, maybe down with one screw all the way down. But that was kept quiet. On the 9th of April 1982, so we're talking again 8 days later, so 1 week later, Canberra, which is a liner, is requisitioned by the British government, and that sails from Southampton with 3 para, 42nd and 45 Royal Marine Commandos. And they will be sailing down, essentially using Ascension Island as a resupply point. Right. On that note, then this will be a good opportunity to have a quick break. And so if you're watching live on Twitch, it's only going to be a couple of minutes. We'll be back in a second. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I've broken up this video into a number of parts, and so I'll see you in the next one. What you'll hear as well in the break is some of my music, and just to let you know, that music is free for you to download on Bandcamp, and it's the band is called E Piraten, and it's spelt capital E, capital P-I-R-A-T-E-N. Go there and grab it, and you can have it with my compliments. Also, just a little bit of a heads up. I will probably do this at the beginning of the next one. It looks like we've hit our target there, which I didn't even know. But there you go. It looks like we've got 80. I don't know what to do next. Do I have to do another one? I suppose so. Let's see if we can get to 100 followers on Twitch. And if you are watching on YouTube, a subscribe and a like helps me out. As you can see, a very small channel, just trying to build up a reputation, essentially. Right, I'll see you in a moment. Welcome to Flight Past. My name is Simon. We are at Ascension Island, and it's we're talking about the Falklands War. We're here because this is a staging post for the task force on its way down to the Falklands. We've just been talking about the carriers, Hermes and Invincible setting off. We've also talked about Canberra being requisitioned, and they're all on the way down down towards this island here. Some of them will stop off at or come from Gibraltar. Some will be, I think the Canberra will refuel at Sierra Leone. And by the way, this is, I've just updated our thing, so we're going to see if we can get to 100. It's a random number, so if you are watching and you wish to be part of the early doors part of this channel, then place a follow. That would be great. So we were talking about how the Falkland Islands was invaded on the 1st of April, and the 2nd of April, and St. Georgia was about the same time. South Georgia was about the same time, and by the 11th of April, so we're talking 8 days later, Splendid and Spartan, these HMS, the submarines of the Royal Navy, they've arrived off the Falklands. Conqueror will arrive off South Georgia around on the 12th of April, and this is the time when the Britain announces its 200-mile maritime exclusion zone around the Falklands. Now, this is Ascension Island, and what we get here is some of the fast ships, the destroyers, the Antrim, the frigate Plymouth, and the tanker Tidespring. They have got here, and along with M Company of the 42nd Commando, they essentially depart here on the 12th of April, and they go. And their mission is to head to South Georgia and to retake South Georgia and remove the Argentine forces there. So as we're just coming over the airfield now, I hope you've got a good sense of this island and its volcanic nature, barren volcanic nature, the tiniest island essentially. Ascensionally in the Atlantic, and we'll leave here and we'll fly back down to St. Georgia. So as we zoom back out, you'll see where we are in terms of the planet. So we're south of the equator, and this is essentially where we are, and this mini task force is sent off, and they're charged with retaking this island here. So I'm going to start. Let's start, because it gets a bit confusing. But we'll start there, and we'll put finish here. But I just want to put in some waypoints so that we can find ourselves again. Okay, let's start there. So this mini task force, as I say, is the destroyer Antrim and the frigate Plymouth with the tanker, the support vessel Tidespring. They're taking M Company of the 42nd Commander So below us is Leaf Harbour. This is where it all sort of kicks off at the beginning. And we're just going to head, we'll do a circle here, and then we'll head north, and we'll start talking about and what happens here. Now, this task force, which is the South Georgia Task Force, they meet up with HMS Endurance, which is already on station here, who's been sort of tracking the Argentine vessels. And what happens is that when the task force gets nearby, helicopters from Antrim insert an SAS team onto the Fortuna Glacier. Let me just try and find where that is. Now remember, we're in well, at the moment this is obviously we're in July, so this actually should be April. So let me just pause here, and we'll go to time, and we'll see if we can reset the date. So let's reset this date to April, and the date that this insertion happens is on the 14th. So in terms of seasons, we're looking here at a early winter down in the South Atlantic. Now what happens is that the this SAS team is inserted onto the Fortuna Glacier, and the Fortuna Glacier, I believe, is around here somewhere. And I don't know why. I mean, it's a long way from anything, but presumably there was a reason to try to put them down on the glacier. Presumably they didn't want to be heard, being inserted, and so the Fortuna Glacier, I believe, is this where these blue dots are here, is this area here. So essentially the helicopters from Antrim fly in and drop these guys off. Now this is the Fortuna Glacier is couple of bay. This bay, for example, away from Leaf Harbour. Now the troops believed to be at Leaf Harbour are believed to be quite hardcore. They're known as the sort of no surrender kind of guys. Presumably the SAS wanted to get in here unnoticed and then get observation onto these people. Now I'm going to have to turn off this weather, I think, because we can't see anything. Let me just let's just take off this live weather so we can see what's going on. So I believe this over here is the Fortuna Glacier. Now, obviously, we don't know where this insertion occurred, but we do know that one of the helicopter that does insert them, crashed. Now, I'm going to just pause here because we may get lucky and actually be able to see any wreckage, because it's unlikely that they would have extracted it. But this is the Fortuna Glacier here. Just let these and so what we're trying to sort of think about here, I suppose, is one, why here? Why would they want to drop these guys here? If anybody has any idea why they would do that, then let us know. And two, because this is winter, it's on a glacier. I mean, I'm not sure that the helicopter is still going to be on the surface after 30 odd 50 years, 40 years, but you never know. I believe it was a Wessex helicopter. There's some sort of structure here that the Microsoft deems to put a building on. You could argue that it's the flattest area around here, I suppose. There are huts here. But Leaf Harbour is on the other side of that water there. So they would have to come down off this glacier. Now, I'm not sure how high these guys would have gone to. I mean, we're not going to find it, are we? But I know the SAS are hard, but this is ridiculous, isn't it? You could argue that this is the part of the Fortuna Glacier too, so maybe it was here. Maybe they were trying to get to this sort of... I mean, you don't know how much this has retreated in the years. But it kind of makes sense maybe that they would come down and land in this area here, flat beach sort of area, so that they could then move up here, and they're essentially trying to get presumably a view down on this this settlement here. Actually, might be where? Yeah, that settlement there. So this is the sort of settlement they're trying to get our eyes on. So you can see how far that Fortuna Glacier is. It depends where the definition of the actual Fortuna Glacier begins. But presumably, see, they would... the SAS were used in a lot of reconnaissance work, essentially. So they will be coming down here to get eyeballs on this Leaf Harbour, which is here, and check out where, essentially start making detailed observations of where the Argentines are based, which buildings they're in, what weapons they've got, all that sort of stuff in preparation for an assault. So it's so yes, you can understand how they would come in using this valley. Maybe they didn't want to actually land on the glacier. Maybe they were trying to come in under the cover, not through that water section, but maybe up. They came up here, and whiteout conditions meant that they got crashed. If anybody has any information about this, then let us know what your thoughts are on why they chose here, or if they were intending to land here. But you were talking about some pretty hairy conditions for flying a helicopter. And in fact, what we can do is we'll get back into the helicopter. But before we do, I'll reset the weather, and we'll show you how easy it is to crash. Of course, this is probably happening at maybe even at night time. The insertion, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see if there's a moon at all. So essentially over the 21st and 22nd of April, the SAS are placed here. There's a crash and they have to be extracted. On the 24th of April, HMS Brilliant arrives. Now, see how this whiteout condition makes it very hard to judge depth perception, so it's so easy to crash. Actually, let me just pause there, make sure. One thing I keep from forgetting is to change the location, so I will do that just in case you guys get so we moved from Ascension now down to South Georgia. Now, what was I say? So on the 18th of April 1982, the task force is racing to Ascension Island, and some of these frigates and destroyers are arriving there ahead of the aircraft carriers and the cruise liners with the troops on it. And so on the 18th of April 1982, Brilliant, Coventry, Glasgow, Sheffield and Arrow are ordered to essentially race to ahead. And the idea is to put a credible military presence down into the exclusion zone around the Falklands, and this is to put maximum diplomatic pressure on the Argentines to withdraw. This is essentially saying we're not messing around, withdraw. And so we're getting. With this, it's kind of like, yes, you've made us come all the way down here to prove that we can take it. Are you really going to make us do it? Essentially, lots of little cabins on this glacier, more than I would have thought. But this is obviously Antarctic survey stuff. I don't know if these are actual real buildings. So if you're just joining us, we're on the Fortuna Glacier on South Georgia, and this is where the SAS were inserted in 1982 in order to try to retake this island. And we were just discussing whether or why they would be dropped here. The mission presumably would be to look over, get an observation post down onto Leith Harbour, which is on the other side of these mountains just here. But as you can see, they would probably therefore have to come in essentially unobserved, and maybe this is the easiest place to find a flat spot to land. We talked about brilliant in Coventry, Glasgow, Arrow racing forwards. The carrier group, by the way, arrive at Ascension Island on the 18th of April. And on that same, the 16th of April, and 2 days later, these essentially, which would be the screening ships. I mean, Coventry, Glasgow, they're the task force outer sort of radar screen. They're racing ahead to get this diplomatic pressure onto the Argentines. Brilliant, one of the ships that left, so they left on the 18th. They actually arrive off South Georgia on the 24th of April, so 6 days later. Now we are going to now fly over Leith Harbour, but we're going to, first of all, once we've done that, we're going to go to this place called Grytviken, which is a little harbour on the other side, another bay over. And what we'll talk about here is the submarine Santa Fe. So this will be a good point to have a quick break. By the way, just notice I haven't crashed yet, so that's pretty good. I'm going to take a quick break. If you're watching on Twitch, it will be a couple of minutes. I'm just going to grab a glass of water. And if you are, again, if you're watching, I'm trying to now get to, thank you for getting to 80. I'm trying to get to 100 now. I don't know why. It just, Twitch says so. But if you're watching on YouTube, you're lagging behind, guys. You needed to subscribe and just trying to catch up with Twitch. And if you do want to watch the previous episodes, then go and look at them on the YouTube channel. And we've done subjects such as D-Day and the Waterloo, the 100 Days, and we're now doing the Falklands, and they're really in-depth looks at these subjects. I'm really getting a good look at the terrain and the challenges, and you can see right here, right now, how challenging this would be, just in just physical terms, to recapture islands like this. And this is the Leith Harbour here, and this is one of the places that the Argentines had taken. And we're going to head over there. Anyway, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking about the recapture of South Georgia. And welcome back. Welcome back indeed. This is Flight Past. My name is Simon, and we are in the Huey here, flying around St. Georgia, and we're trying to find some of these locations that were important during the recapture of South Georgia in 1982. We're currently flying from Leif. We're coming over Stromness Bay. This below us is Busan Peninsula. And when we get over here, we should now come to another bay called Cumberland West Bay. We just talked about in the previous section how the SAS was inserted onto the Fortuna Glacier, but the aircraft crashed. Not sure whether the Fortuna Glacier was the actual mission target, or was it was trying to get somewhere and crashed on it. But they had to be extracted on the 22nd of April. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to fly over this bay here, which I believe is the Cumberland West Bay. We'll fly across essentially to an area called Hounds Bay. And so this may take a little while, and as we do, I'll get you familiar with some of this area. We've got up here on the left, this is the Lyell Glacier coming down this way. Over here, probably there, is something called the Neumeier Glacier, and we are flying over Cumberland West Bay. So the taking of South Georgia is obviously a symbolic gesture. They're not really sending a huge amount of troops here to capture it, but it's these special forces that are being used to insert. Essentially, there's the SAS. We're going to be talking about some of the SBS, Special Boat Service, are involved in this, and then Royal Marines as well, as part of this the recapture. So we're heading down, coming across here. This is the peninsula, which has got the Grytviken town on its eastern side with a jetty. And we'll be going, flying across here. We'll then be crossing what's known as the Cumberland East Bay. And we'll just keep it a little bit low. Keep it visual for now. So the days we're talking here, the recapture of these islands take place essentially from a period of around about the 21st of April 1982, around about to the 25th of April, 26th of April probably. That's the sort of time period it takes for this recapture. And remember, this was only captured essentially in on the 2nd of April. So here we go. This is the town below us of Grytviken, and you'll see St. King Edward Point is this sort of jetty that sticks out here. But before we do that, we're going to fly over this peninsula across here, which is the Bath Peninsula, and we're going to try and find a place called Hound Bay. The weather's closing in a bit here. We'll stick with it for now. Looks like it's better on the other side. And we're trying to find the Hounds Bay because on the 21st of April, so the same time that the SAS is being inserted on the Fortuna Glacier up on the target of Leif Harbour, the SBS is being landed at a place called Hounds Bay. And they are landed by the helicopter of from HMS Endurance, and there is a valley. I think actually, if we turn this way, called the Soling Valley, and this was essentially where the SBS would try to cross, and I believe this here would be the valley that we're talking about. On the right hand side here is another glacier. I think it's called the Nordensfjord Glacier, but we're more interested in this this valley here. It's incredible to think, you know, with these distances. Look at these distances. These guys are being dropped, obviously, many kilometers away from their targets, on the other side of a bay. You know, they really do not want to be located at all. So I believe this is one of these here is the Soling Valley, and we should then, if we fly over this peninsula here, which is called the Bath Peninsula, we'll come to Hounds Bay, and Hounds Bay is essentially where HMS Endurance is stationed. You've got to appreciate, you can really see here the possible conditions that these guys met, and appreciate their physical bravery to be able to survive this. And as we've seen, but what we'll see as well is essentially the conditions in this area actually prevent the SBS from progressing from this area. But here we go. This is Hounds Bay, and this is where the SBS was dropped by helicopter, and they were dropped on the beach down here. So we'll just have a quick mosey around here, and then we'll fly back towards Grytviken. So here we are. This is Hounds Bay. And this was the place where the SBS was dropped by helicopters of HMS Endurance. and this was on the 21st of April 1982. And they were going to essentially cross this peninsula and insert themselves, presumably using some boats or rafts. They would then proceed across the Cumberland East Bay in some sort of fashion. But ice, wind, the conditions, the 22nd and 24th, so they dropped here on the 21st. Between the 22nd and 24th, the SPS are prevented from continuing their mission to cross the Cumberland East Bay, and so they are extracted. So this is the bay, by the way, that Endurance was stationed in, presumably offshore here. In this area. So we'll bend round here and we'll go back, and we'll then look at the next place where the these special forces are trying to get into, and that is an SAS insertion onto an island called Grass Island, which is in the Stromness Bay. And obviously they're going to be trying to use this island as a position to observe the Argentine presence in Leaf Harbour and Stromness in itself. So let's head back using the Soaring Valley. We'll follow the SBS and on their route in to try to insert. You can see how difficult it is. But obviously they must have been very conscious of knowing what they were up against before they actually went in. Whilst we're flying back, we will talk about actually one of the key times in this battle, and that was on the 25th of April 1982, and this is when the Argentine submarine, the Santa Fe. Now remember, the Santa Fe was the submarine that helped to insert some demolition people onto the Falklands Islands on the invasion. To the north of the airport. Well, the Santa Fe's here, and it's caught on the surface, essentially emerging from this bay of where Grytviken is. And it's caught by a Lynx helicopter, and it's fired upon. But because the submarine is on the surface, and the torpedo that was dropped was set to be attack a submerged target, and essentially the torpedo went underneath the Santa Fe, but the helicopter then strafed it on the surface and tried to disable it. Now that's not the only this Santa Fe was essentially attacked by numerous helicopters. So the first one let me see which there was a number of it was attacked essentially by Antrams, Wessex, It was attacked by Brilliance, Lynx. It was attacked by the Wasp of Endurance. Second Lynx attack from Brilliant, and the Wasp again from Endurance. And it was joined by the Plymouth's Wasp, Endurance Wasp again twice. So this thing is hounded all the way back into its into Grytviken, and there's a famous picture of this submarine essentially tied to the dock, but at a bit of a rakish angle. So we're talking about this bay here. Let's head that way. So yes, on the 25th of April is when essentially Antrim and Plymouth join Brilliant here. So we've got Antrim's, Brilliant, Plymouth's aircraft, helicopters are all joining in, basically disabling this submarine. And the Marines and SAS parties are landed by Antrim and Brilliant's helicopters on a place called the Hestesletten Flats. Now, I believe that's this area over here. So let's go over there. We'll go over to Grass Island in a second as well. We might as well finish off this part. So Santa Fe comes out of this bay here and proceeds out this way, and then it's absolutely jumped upon by several aircraft, helicopters, Wasps, Lynx helicopters, Wessex helicopters, all firing at it, and it has to retreat back into this harbour. This section here is the insertion point of the Marines and SAS from the and they were brought in from Antrim and Brilliant using their helicopters. So let's do that. So let's be a helicopter pilot inserting the Marines. And what we might do as well, once we just do a quick flyover, I'll jump out and we'll jump around. There's things we could try to look at here. There's a possibility we could still see the Puma, the Argentine Puma helicopter that crashed. We'll see if we can have a look for that. So this is the flat area that was essentially used to insert the Royal Marines and the SAS. And this is on the 25th of April. In fact, That looks like a... Pause, 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 pause. Thought for a second this looks like a helicopter, but it's not. So this is the flatland, as you can see. They insert the troops here, and then they move essentially into this area here. Now that Puma crash, when the original invasion occurred, the Royal Marines were in this section here, and the Puma was shot and it crashed on this side here. Let me just change this weather to something so we can see the actual ground underneath, and see if we can see any evidence of a Puma. Can't quite see anything. What's that there? That's doesn't look helicopterish. This might have been cleared up. It could have been overgrown by now, but you never know. So what we're looking for here is an Argentine Puma helicopter which crashed into this coastline here. And now the Santa Fe, when it sailed out into this bay here, was, as I say, shot at. It was couldn't submerge, and had to come back, and presumably it had come into this bay to resupply these people, or even extract someone. We don't know. This is the sort of whaling station, and I believe the famous photo of the submarine at a dock is this dock here, and it was at a bit of a rakish angle. Whether it's been removed now, I don't know. Maybe it's here still. If it was this one. Old boat. Maybe it was here. That's not it, is it? That's doesn't look very submarine-ish. Like, it might be actually, was that? No, that's not it, is it? That looks like an actual jetty, doesn't it? Old boats. So if anyone knows whether it is still there or not, it might be. Could have been scrapped. Probably was salvaged. There's another boat here. Okay, so we can't quite see anything there. Right, let's jump back in the helicopter. Five is here, thank you. Well, I mean, it's kind of cool, isn't it, that you can use satellite imagery. It was scuttled in 1985, okay. I did not know that. So was it patched up and then taken somewhere? I do. It is this. This is the bay, isn't it? That it came back into. So So if it was scuttled in 1985, it was presumably. What you mean? It was dragged out to sea and just blown up. I'll have to do some research on that. So essentially, anyway, the SAS and the Royal Marines are inserted onto these flats down here behind us to come in into there. Now, just to do a quick, whilst we're here, essentially, the Royal Navy then moves in to this field, whatever you want to call it, and they start to bombard, or they do warning shots, essentially, against the Argentine garrison who are stationed here, and they're essentially requested to surrender. Which they will do. Now, regards to the SAS at Leith, so let's fly back to Leith Harbour. So if you were here, guys, earlier, we were looking at Fortuna Glacier, and we were trying to I was trying to work out whether or why the SAS would want to land on Fortuna Glacier. So if you weren't there for that, we're going to go back there and you can help me try to work out what they were trying to do. Now, Fortuna Glacier is on the other side of the bay of Leith Harbour. Now, if we head to Leith, so Leith Harbour is essentially where it all began, when these scrap metal dealers arrived, and the Argentine special forces used it as cover, essentially to as an excuse to put up the Argentine flag. So let's just head back that way. Now, the SAS was placed, was sent in, inserted, and we just looked at the SBS. They were put out down at Hounds Bay. They couldn't get across the East Cumberland Bay. The conditions were just too bad. And similar thing happened to the SAS up at Fortuna Glacier. And what happens then is that the SAS then reinsert themselves essentially to an island, which was called Grass Island. They came in from using Geminis, these boats, inflatable boats, from HMS Endurance, and they inserted themselves onto Grass Island. So, and this Grass Island is essentially in the bay of Leith Harbour. Now let me get my map up. We're going to be trying to go, yeah, we need to go left here. So we're heading to this area here. And what I'll do as well whilst I'm here, I'll put the live weather back on just to give you a feel for the conditions that was likely to have been met. We got April month, and this is the sort of live weather that we get. And we just fly back this way. This, by the way, beneath us now is Cumberland West Bay. And this is the Busan Peninsula, which we're going to be rounding here. and we'll come into a place called Stromness Bay. Adam, thank you. I believe it was resurfaced after it partially sunk in port and towed out into deep water in 1985. Okay, thank you. That makes sense, I suppose. So, if you weren't here in previous stream, we looked into the Argentine invasion on the 1st of April, and the Santa Fe took part in that invasion. It actually inserted a sort of they call it like a demolition squad, I think, to the north of Stanley. They captured the lighthouse station, and then they moved across the bay and secured this bay called York Bay, which is on the Pembroke Peninsula, where the airport is. So I think what was happening as well, the Santa Fe was it trying to evade essentially the exclusion zones, and maybe was over here as part of a sort of resupply mission or extraction mission. I'm not sure. But capturing it on the surface was a bit of luck, because you could imagine what that would have done to the task force if it was around. This here is Leif Harbour here, and this island just on the just behind the central bit here, this little island here, is Grass Island, and this is where the SAS was inserted on the 22nd evening of the 22nd, 23rd. So they came around this headland in Gemini, and essentially to get to here. There's a settlement just here, a small one there, and Leif Harbour here. So this is a perfect position, essentially, to observe these positions. So you could tell that the British, when they first arrived here, used the SAS and SBS essentially to reconnoitre what was going on. But conditions had effectively prevented two of the insertions, and eventually they just land the troops a lot nearer and bring in the big guns, as it were, and use the naval artillery to intimidate the Argentine troops. Now over here at Leif Harbour is where we find this guy. He's known as the Nun Killer, and it's not a joke. This guy was a bit of a nasty bit of work. His name was Artiz, and he had was part of the disappeared action, the Dirty War in Argentina. He had a number of countries who had extradition orders on him, and he was the leader of these troops who had a motto. Who was they're basically very hardcore. Had a motto of no surrender. And but we'll find out that essentially he just gives up straight away when and surrenders immediately. So this is Leif Harbour here. So whilst you're here, I'm going to show you where Fortuna Glacier is, and I just wanted, if anybody knew why it was that these the SAS or the SBS are inserted so far away from this area. So they're obviously going to try to get to this area here to observe this settlement. So they wanted to probably get in a position somewhere on these mountains, looking down, and presumably their first thought is that we need to be inserted a long enough way that the helicopters don't get heard. Yeah, it's quite a mystery. Again, it's a possibility that we may see the crashed site. I believe the insertion was with a Wessex helicopter. There's a famous photo of it on its side. So we may see that. Again, we'll get to Fortuna Glacier. We'll put on the nice weather and we'll see if we can find it. So Fortuna Glacier is across this bay over here. So this, where my white dot is now, is essentially the glacier. So judging by the target is there, the SAS initial insertion was here. Now I'm not sure whether they this is the whole glacier, by the way. You can see it here coming down, whether they were dropped on the top of it, or they were dropped down here, or possibly they tried to get into here. Maybe they didn't want to be heard in this this bay, but this is the essentially where they were dropped. April, so early winter. You know, the conditions are probably pretty bleak. In fact, let's just see if we can turn off this live weather now and see if we can spot anything. I've had a look around, can't see anything, but you can see clearly now this is the Fortuna Glacier all the way up here, around here. So I have no idea where it is that they were put into. You would suppose see a glacier in a certain sense. If you're being helicopter inserted, it's flattish. But I would have thought you would maybe try to get inserted down here. Possibly you could argue that the glacier came around here, and that tongue there might have been part of it. But if I just pause here and we can jump out. So this is where in this area somewhere then they were inserted, and this is on the 21st and 22nd. Inserted, helicopter crashes and then have to be extracted, and their objective, I presume, at the time is on the other side of this peninsula here, those two bays there with the island, grass island in the middle. So it's a long way, I mean a really long way from that point. Presumably they, unless, you know, the nearest point maybe you could argue is that they maybe came down here and it was somewhere around here. But I can't see any crashed helicopter sign. You'd expect maybe Microsoft would actually change a helicopter that's on its side to a hut. Because obviously, you know, you do get these random huts like this. But there's several of them. They could just be mistaken boulders or something. But even if you were up here, you're gonna, you know, you are the SAS, I suppose, but you're gonna have to come down here across there. Is that really? I mean, it's pretty cautious, isn't it? Being that wary of not being heard or seen. You could argue, I suppose, that this maybe was part of the Fortuna Glacier. It comes round, comes down, so maybe it was actually this tongue of ice here. Anyway, you can obviously see that their target would then to be somehow get into this area, into these mountains, and they would probably be trying to set up a observation post, probably on this this mountain here, so that you can see both sides, both towns, and pinpoint where the Argentines are likely to have been. This is Grass Island. This is the essentially the Plan B. They actually just came in here and inserted onto this island here, and so from here they could then observe both towns. All right. What's we doing? We are getting up for 2 hours. So, once again, Leif Harbour, naval presence. This nun killer Artiz, he surrenders actually without a shot being fired, and that's on the 26th of April 1982. So South Georgia was taken by the Argentines, flag raised on the 2nd of April, and then on the 26th of April, so 24 days later, they are forced to surrender, which is, and looking at the conditions here, is quite remarkable. And of course, that was essential as well for the Thatcher government. They've had so much sort of bad news, as it were. They needed a quick success, and this having the British flag flying back over the South Georgia gave Margaret Thatcher her fillip, as it were, to continue, and that it was possible that that it could be done. Now, of course, the Falklands was a completely different kettle of fish in terms of actual forces. This is just a token Argentine presence, token flag flying. That essentially a few companies of men of the Royal Marines and SAS, SBS removed quite quickly with some naval support. So I'm going to leave it there for today, and when we come back, probably tomorrow, we will start looking at the Falklands. Now, remember, at this stage, the Hermes and Invincible have arrived at Ascension Island, and at the moment, we haven't had any massive casualties, and the British government and Margaret Thatcher is essentially sending down a task force in order to strengthen their diplomatic position in forcing the Argentines to leave the islands. But as we'll see, what we get, though, is two loggerheads at each other, and then certain events occur, which means it's impossible for these two to not be going to a war, and that's why we end up with a surrender only when guns are actually aiming down a hill at Port Stanley. So when we come back, then we'll look into, I think we'll start looking into the task force. It starts arriving. I've got a really good book that's got some information on the air superiority, or air fight, the fight for the air, and we can look at the sudden engagements of the task force aircraft and the Argentine aircraft. And I thought what would be really cool is each day when we get to sort of May time, when the task force arrives on station, we'll start seeing this fight for the skies happening, and we can look at the bases, the Argentine bases, and we'll fly a mission from Argentina to the Falklands to sort of gauge the sort of distances involved in that, and then we can see all the sort of we'll have a look at all the different aircraft that were knocked out, British and Argentine, and try and have a look to see if we can see any wreckage still in the satellite imagery. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please follow, like, subscribe, love, hug, and all that sort of stuff. We are looking at trying to get to 100 followers on Twitch. I think on YouTube we're at about 40-ish. I can't remember now. So the YouTube people are really letting the side down. If you want to see this stuff that we've done before. It is on YouTube. I've broken it into little bits. Go back and have a look at them. We've done a series on D-Day. We've done one on the Battle of Waterloo, and essentially followed Napoleon from Elba all the way to Waterloo and then to St. Helena. And then we're continuing here looking at the Falklands War. Please leave any messages and comments below. If I've made a mistake, I'm bound to have done. And please correct me if I get things wrong. Please put in any, if you've got anything interesting to say, or you've got any notes or something, or you've got more of an expert than I am, then please let us know. I'm just here to essentially have a look at the terrain, and hopefully other people who've got a lot more knowledge can chip in, such as, I'd like to say thank you to Guy at the back, 5 is here, Adam Atwood, thank you very much for your contribution today, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.